my name is Rachel and I'm here today to finally film my favourite books of the year for 2019. It is 2020, it's been 2020 for a while, it's nearly March, this will probably go up in March, and yeah, I should have filmed this video a while ago, I just didn't. I have been very chill and just doing my own thing, and that's been quite nice, and I haven't been reading as much, but the last week I've been off work because I work in a school. It's got the holidays and I've been reading a lot more and I've been watching some booktube videos and it's just been so nice. So I feel like I'm feeling happy about reading and I wanted to make this video today. So these are going to be my favourite books I read in 2019. There are 10 books on this list and I'm really happy with the way that it's actually worked out. I've got 2 classics on here, some translated fiction. Oh, that's interesting. I don't think I've had translated fiction on a favourites list before. Got 2 non-fictions, some children's books, some YA, some LGBT stuff. So I'm really happy with the mix that's going on in this list. So yeah, we're just going to get started at number 10, which is Goldfish Boy by Lolita Thompson. So this was really a surprise for me. So in the summer of 2019 I had an interview for the job that I have now actually, and it was working in a school as a librarian, so I wanted to read some current children's books that were out at the time to kind of have something current to mention in my interview, like just prepping, and so this was one of the ones that I saw. I think it won the book awards in the town that I live in, and it was also just very highly praised across the board, and so I decided to pick this one up and I was so glad that I did. I absolutely loved this. This is about a little boy called Matthew. Matthew has very severe OCD and he finds it hard to leave the house because nothing's clean, everything needs to be clean for him. Then a baby goes missing and he decides that he is going to solve this mystery of where this missing child has gone, and that is the basic premise of this book. The reason that I loved it is I think it's really accessible for children and it has such a severe case of a mental illness but shown in a way that I think is really easy for children to understand and not too scary, if that makes sense. And I just absolutely love it. It's the most beautiful book. Like, when I read it I didn't even bend the spine, which I do with books a lot. I matched all of these tabs so that they were blue because I just think it's so pretty. I didn't want to ruin it. I really loved this. It was great. So I do want to pick up some more Lolita Thompson. I have been hoping to do that, so I might try and do that this year because I really liked this one. In at number 9 we have The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Bronte. So this was my second Bronte, so I've read all of Bronte's books now. I much preferred this to Agnes Grey, although I did like Agnes Grey. People tend to hate Agnes Grey and love this one, or hate this one and love Agnes Grey. I actually quite liked Agnes Grey, but I really loved this one, like head over heels. It was such a great book. I absolutely loved the main character in this, Helen. She is so strong and just, oh, I just loved her so much. I will say I gave it 4.5 stars because I didn't like Gilbert that much. I thought he was a bit annoying and I didn't love her narrative, and her voice was told through his voice, so like I just don't love, although it is very common. Obviously it happens in Wuthering Heights as well, with Nellie Dean being edited by Lockwood. I know that it is a thing that Bronte's did, but I don't like it. I want the woman's voice on its own. But apart from that, I really loved this, and I understand why people talk about this as something that could be happening now. Like, this book is so current to issues that are happening today and the sort of stuff that people face in relationships and, you know, with children and relationships and ownership of children and that sort of a thing. It's a lot more simple and there's a lot less rights for women in this. However, it's not actually all that different from the situation today, which is terrible, but it does make this very relevant and very enjoyable. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Absolutely loved this one, and I went and seen a play of it and it was really good, so we're happy. That's number 9. Then at number 8, a book that did not surprise me as being a book that I loved was Lanny by Max Porter. So in either 2017 or 2018, Grief is the Thing with Feathers was one of my favourite books that I read that year. Looking back, the 2 books that were my favourite were Grief is the Thing with Feathers and Red Rising, and when I think about it now I'm like, Griffith's Thing with Feathers was my favourite book that year because I have much more of an attachment and love for that book than I do for Red Rising. So going into this, I was super excited and it did not let me down. It's really weird what this is about, but I will say, if you've read books like Skellig and The Nest and like those like creepy, weird monster calls, it has that kind of a vibe in this book. And it's basically about this little village and they have this, what's the demon thing called? Dead Papa Tootworth, who kind of walks around and he's kind of like a spirit and he's not real but he kind of is real in the text, and we get these amazing sections written from his perspective where the writing is just absolutely everywhere. I don't know, like it really like pulled you in and I really loved it. I read this pretty much in one sitting when I was on holiday, and that is the best way to read it. And it's about a little boy called Lanny and sort of the people around him. So we follow Lanny himself, we follow Dead Papa Tootworth, we follow his mum, we follow his dad, and we follow this guy who is kind of teaching him art, but he isn't a teacher, he's an artist who the mum is kind of friends with, and so he helps out with Lanny doing art because he really likes it. I don't know how to describe the plot of this because it isn't really about the plot, it's about the characters and the way that it's written. So I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it, but I really did enjoy this. I thought it was so well written and it's so beautifully published. Like, Faber always published things beautifully, but I mean, it's just, I just think it's so pretty. So yeah, would recommend that one, really loved it. At number 7, we have a book that I was really excited to read, and then I read it and I was like, that was alright. And then the longer the year went on and the more distance I got from this book, the more I was like, I really loved that book. It's weird and I don't really, like, it's just fucking weird, but I loved it so much. And it is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. Not sure if I said that right, sorry. It's also translated from the Japanese by Ginny Tapley Takamori. I was pulled to this book because I just think, number one, it looks gorgeous. When you see it in Waterstones, it looks even prettier because they have this copy, they have like a pale blue copy and they have a pale pink copy, and you can get whichever one you want, and they just look so beautiful. Like, I'm so tempted all the time to buy the other 2 copies just to have them together, even though there's no need for me to do that. I don't need 3 copies of this book, but I want to do it all the time. I really enjoyed this. So this is about a woman called Keiko. That's how I read her name. I don't know if it is pronounced different, that's just how I read it. But it's about this woman called Keiko. She works in a convenience store and she basically lives for this convenience store. She breathes it, it's everything to her. Like, she goes home after work and she looks after herself and she gets into bed because she's got work at the convenience store tomorrow. And when she's in there, like, other people are kind of talking about their social lives outside of this store, and she's like, no, I just think about the store. Why are they talking about, like, I don't know how to explain it. She just lives for this job. Obviously, like, it is about that. It is about her obsession with this store, but really this book kind of comes down to being this obsession other people have with trying to make her the same as them, make her want more, make her want children, make her want a family, make her want a better job, make her, you know, just strive for something that they see as better, when actually she's perfectly happy doing what she is doing. I found it a bit similar to The Vegetarian, not story-wise, but just in the way of, like, someone making a decision for them and then everyone else piling on and trying to, like, change the decision and tell them their decision isn't good enough and blah 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 blah, which they do when the woman decides to be a vegetarian in The Vegetarian by Han Kang. So I find those quite similar. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really stunning book. It's really weird, and when I put it down, I didn't necessarily think that I loved it, but the more time went on, I've just developed this, like, oh my god, this book, I love it, da 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 da. So yeah, excited for this. Want to try and pick up some more translated fiction that's like that and like The Vegetarian, that, like, slightly weird but also really normal. Like, that one's just about a woman who works in a store. It's just like the most boring of things you would think, but then it just has this like really weird, I don't know, but I want to try and pick up more books like that this year because I really enjoyed that one, and I just, yeah, I find them fun to read. So we enjoyed that. Then we have book number 6. We have a book that has taken me forever to read, and it is a book that I think is going to stay with me for a while, and I'm just in awe of a book like this. And it is Another Day in the Death of America, 24 Hours, 8 States, 10 Young Lives Lost to Gun Violence, and this is by Gary Young. In this, Gary Young took a day in America, I think, what day was it? The 23rd of November 2013, and he just looked at the 10 children and teens that were shot that day. So the youngest was 9, the oldest was 19, some were white, black and Latino. They fell in the suburbs, hamlets and ghettos. None of them made the national news. There was no outrage about their passing. It was just another day in the death of America, where an average 7 children and teens are killed by guns daily. Terrifying. So I find the concept of having guns just like, I don't get it. It's something that I really just, I can't understand, and I never can bring myself to understand. And I think it wasn't until I was at university, and I remember me and my friend watching Bowling for Columbine. I remember us both just like for days and days and days, it was all we could talk about, and it just had such a lasting impact on me. And so when I picked this up, one of the hardest things, the first time that I put it down, the reason that I put it down is because this is like 10-20 years after that Michael Moorcock documentary, and it's exactly the same. What are they called? They're not called the RAF, because that's the RAF. The something Gun Association, RFA, NFA, National Rifle Association. I don't know what they're called. They're basically a gun lobbying group in America. They do the same thing in this that they did after shootings in that documentary. They turn up and they have lobbies about how great guns are, like the day after someone's been shot. You have no change in gun laws and who can get a gun. It's just crazy that there's this huge epidemic happening that is like killing more people than most, you know, illnesses. Like everyone's taking coronavirus, for example, really seriously at the moment, and like gun crime in America is probably killing more people than coronavirus, but everyone's talking about coronavirus because this is just taken for granted as, yeah, people just die from gun crime in our country. Like, I don't get it. I find it really strange. Like, I'm not saying it to have a go at America. It's literally like I just don't, there's no compatibility in my head, just because I think I live in a country that doesn't have that. It seems completely alien to me. This book is just fascinating, and it's really cool that it gives a voice to, like it said, like all of these people who were shot. There was no outrage, they weren't on the national news, no one was talking about them. So it's quite nice that there is at least a book that talks about these people, about their lives. He doesn't just talk about what happens to them, he talks about their life in general. He talks about the things that they were doing, he talks about their friends, their partners, the things they wanted to do, their dreams, their families, the good things about them. I think it's a really nice book. I would love this if I had been one of those families, because I feel like I would read this and be like somebody cared that this happened to my child. Do you know what I mean? So I think this is a really nice book in that way, and it's very informative. I do think that it's a little bit counterproductive for me to read this book because Gary Young is British. He was a writer for The Guardian, I think, in England, and then he moved over there, and then I think he's moved back now. I'm saying that I don't understand it, and I've read a book by an English person who's also just not going to understand it because they're English. So maybe I need to pick up books by American people on gun crime and violence, and that might make it clearer. But this is a very informative book and I did really enjoy it. Then we have the book in at number 5. So this is a book that I picked up for Non-Fiction November, and I picked it up because my best friend kept talking about it, and I was like, I'm gonna give this book a try. She keeps banging on about it. She told me a really cute quote from it, so I was like, okay, gonna read it. And I read it so fast, and I swear it was one of the most enjoyable reads I've had in ages, like in years. It was literally one of those that just makes you warm inside as you're reading it. I absolutely loved it. And it is Boy, Tales of Childhood by Roald Dahl. I didn't really know that much about him, and so this was really, really fascinating. You can see so many places where he got the ideas for his books. There is this section where he is at boarding school, and Cadbury's had this deal where they would send loads of chocolate to the school and ask the kids for a rating, you know, when they were like manufacturing a new chocolate bar. And he was like, the kids would basically just be scoffing chocolate, but they'd be pretending that they were like, this chocolate is like that, like they were at a wine tasting. They were like pretending they were adults, and you could just see like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in that whole situation. And you have like this woman called Mrs. Pratchett who owns a sweet shop nearby, and she's absolutely horrible. And the whole time I was reading that section I was thinking, this is Miss Trunchbull from Matilda. It's nice to read because you can kind of see all these little influences that went into his books, which is really, really cool. It is so funny. I loved it so much. And it's got the same illustrations as his books do by Quentin Blake, which is really nice. I will say I read Going Solo in January. I haven't spoken about it because I didn't do a wrap up for January, but I did read Going Solo in January and I didn't enjoy it half as much as this. This is definitely like the superior one. I really loved this. It was just so funny. And then the situation now is I have 4 books that I have absolutely loved this year. They are all books that I want to reread. 2 of them I read 3 times in 2019. I enjoyed them that much. One of them, it sent me into a spiral of literally was looking up lectures on this book online, and I watched like 3 different hour-and-a-half lectures about this book because I was just like, I just felt like I was back at uni again and I wanted to like rip the book apart and know everything. It was just amazing. And then the other one, I just have such a love for this author who is now one of my favourite authors of all time. She's definitely like one of my current up there faves. So I don't really think that I can put these in any particular order. So I'm just going to pick them up as I pick them up, but they're all number 1. They're all great and I love them all for very different reasons. They're all very different actually. Well, 2 of them are quite similar, but all the rest are extremely different. 2 of them are happy though and 2 of them are sad. So we'll take a happy one and a sad one and we'll do it that way. So the first one that I want to mention is What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. I mentioned this book a lot in 2019 because I first read it in January. It came out in January, I think, of 2019, and I read it straight away, and then I reread it. I think I reread it in February. I reread it like pretty much immediately, and then I reread it again in the summer, I want to say. So I really I got some feelings about this book. This book is about Ben and Arthur. They meet in a post office in New York at the start of the summer, and they sort of have this like little bit of an attraction to each other, just like a meet cute in a movie, but they don't get each other's numbers, don't have any contact information. It's like, oh, that's a shitty opportunity we didn't take at the time and now it's gone. Except they kind of both want to find each other and they both start trying to find each other, and then it's about like the summer that maybe they find each other and maybe they date a bit. I don't want to say too many spoilers, but I love this book. This is the perfect summer read, the perfect romantic read. Oh my god, I just remembered a book that I didn't put in this list. Fucking hell, I can't believe I didn't put it in this list. Okay, we'll deal with that in a minute. Absolutely adore it. I just think it's so cute. You can tell immediately which character Becky wrote and which character Adam wrote, and I think that really works because it gives you such a distinct separation between these 2 characters when you read them, which I think is really important. I'm writing something that has a multiple perspective, and one of the things is that like I don't think there's enough separation between them, and it's because I'm writing both of them. Whereas with this, because they're written by different people, they're just so separate. The person that Becky wrote, like, he's so optimistic and he's so like, oh, everything's lovely, as he would be. He's written by Becky Albertalli. And the Adam Silvera one is like, oh, everything's gonna go bad, nothing's gonna go right, I am kind of shitty about everything, as he would be, because he's written by Adam Silvera, so it really works, and I really love it. I think it's really, really sweet, and it had so many allusions to things that I love. It had so many like moments talking about like Hamilton and Dear Evan Hansen, and did they talk about Heathers? I don't know if they talked about Heathers or I just imagined that. There's just like so many allusions to all of these things that I absolutely love, so I really loved reading this and I thought it was a really great one. But then we'll talk about this one, which is Almost Love by Louise O'Neill. So this is Louise O'Neill's first adult book. So I've read Surface Breaks, I've read, what's it called? Asking for It. But I've not read Only Ever Yours yet. That's the last one I have to read. But I'd read both of those prior to reading this one. And they're both YAs. And I think the style that she has works really well for this book, because in this we follow a girl called Sarah who is kind of fixated on a relationship she had in the past with a boy called Matthew. We are in the present and her life is kind of collapsing around her, and she is, I think, depressed, to be honest. And she is in this relationship that she should be happy in, and the guy is lovely and she should really care about him, but this other relationship fixates on her mind, and it's not really because she's in love with the guy, it's because he was like emotionally abusive and kind of neglected her as a partner. Being like that, it kind of makes you fixate on it and makes it stick in your mind, and it's that sort of a thing that happens in this. But it works really well because she's a YA writer, and YA is so in the mind of the narrator and very dramatic and all that sort of stuff, and you know, this just suited that so well. So I really enjoyed that. I thought Sarah was fantastic. I actually listened to this on audiobook, and I would highly recommend the audiobook because it's read by someone who's Irish, and so I didn't have to deal with the names, which I feel like if I had read this book I would have been stuck on names all the way through, because the boy that she's with, I think they said it as Oisin in the book, so it's spelled O-I-S-I with a little thing over the top, N, which I would have literally just sat there the whole time going Oisin? Oisin? Ozin, which it's not, it's Oisin. I think that's how they pronounced it in the audiobook. Would recommend the audiobook if you're not Irish, because it's a great way to understand the names easily. Louise O'Neill is the master at the minute. She is tackling like so many topics that are important to women that I just don't think enough people are talking about. So absolutely loving her, and loved this book, and was just like very on board with its existence. I mean, reading it and just everything about it was great. I'm going to go and grab the book that I've forgotten. The reason I've forgotten it is because my mum is reading it, and I had all of these books. I never plan my videos, but I grab books and just leave them in a pile. That is my extent of planning, and so if it's not in the pile then I've forgotten about it. And so there is another book, because my mum was reading it, she took it off the pile and I forgot it existed. So actually there are 11 books in this video and I need to go and get the other one. In terms of this hierarchy, it's probably around here. So it's not in with these 4 that are my favourite books because I love them so much, but it's probably like just before them, something like that. It is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, which is just like everyone's favourite book at the minute anyway. This is about Alex, who is the first son of the President of the USA, and then it's about, what's it called, Harry? Is he called Harry or am I just Henry? He's called Henry, isn't he? Henry, who is the Prince of England. Basically, they have a really bad relationship. They don't like each other, they don't get on, and it becomes a PR nightmare because an incident happens. And so both of their respective PR teams are like, you two need to sort this out, you need to be seen out in public, getting along so that we can crush this whole situation, because it's not good for either of us. They start to see each other, but they hate each other. But as tropes do, hate to love becomes a thing, and I love hate to love stories. They are like my favourite kind of trash. So I really liked this. I really loved the sort of inclusion of different heritages as well. So Alex, I want to say that he's Mexican, but I can't remember where it is that he is from specifically. But yeah, he kind of has this whole heritage with his parents, especially his dad. It's really cool, and they're like the first family of that heritage to be in the White House, which is really cool. They're just super cute. It's just super cute, and I really loved it. And it's one of those where you read it and you're like, this would never happen, but I love it. Like, I love it so much. Yeah, it's cute. So the reason I remembered it is because I was like talking about that as the best summer read, and I read it so fast and everything, and this was exactly the same. Read it, I absolutely ate this up. So what we're gonna do next, we have two big hitters. We'll do this one. So then we have Just Juliet by Charlotte Reagan, which I obviously loved in 2019 because I wouldn't shut my fucking mouth about it the whole year. This book follows Lena. A new girl moves to her school called Juliet, and the minute she catches sight of her, basically she starts to have these feelings that she's not really had before. It's just like a coming out story, first relationship story, all that sort of stuff. The reason I love this book so much, the reason I read it so many times, the reason I got it from my best friend and made her read it, the reason I've been banging on about it all year, is that this is like the book that I would have needed when I was in school. Lena like realizes she's bisexual and she has to deal with her parents and how they react, and she has to deal with the way her friends react. She has people telling her she's not really and it's a phase, and she has this like intense relationship with someone, and she is given the space to decide all these things on her own, and she isn't pressured into so many things. And I just think this is like such a great book for people to read when they're young, especially if they're like an LGBT person. I feel like this just would have helped me so much with coming to terms with who I was and coming out and all of those sorts of things, because this book just, it's just so lovely and positive. It has an unfortunate cover because I feel like this cover makes it seem like a really trashy book, and it isn't. It's the equivalent of, let me think of a book. I'd say it's the equivalent of like Everything by Nicola Yoon, or like Eleanor and Park, like a John Green book. It's one of those types of stories, those like YA contemporary romancy stories, but this cover makes it look really trashy, and it's not trashy. And I feel like it's a bit too obvious, because I would never have picked this book up at school, because I would have thought, well, that's the poster for being gay if nothing else is. I don't think they did a good job with the cover, but I absolutely love this book and would highly recommend it. The audiobook is obviously amazing because I listened to it 3 times and then I bought the book. So we love this book very much. It means a lot to me. And then the last book that I'm going to mention is the book that I said set me off on my like wanting to be back at uni, dissecting a book. I was watching loads of lectures about it. I started listening to podcasts about it. I was watching these really old interviews with the author because they're basically like radio broadcasts because it's a really old book. I just have such a connection to this book, and I always knew that I was going to. I have been saying for years that it was the book I wanted to read the most. It was the highest on my TBR for all of the times since I got it, and I just kept not reading it, and I finally read it this year. And it is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. So I get why there is a split on this. It's a very Marmite book, and I completely understand because it's very uncomfortable and the subject matter is so insane. Like it's very horrible to read at times. But oh my god, the writing of this book, it is tabbed to like there's so many tabs in here I can't even like. This is one of the most beautifully written books I have ever read in my life, and just like listening to Vladimir Nabokov talk about it and listening to these lectures and seeing this like this way of, oh my god, it was just so cool. Like basically when you write a book, the book's gone and it's alive when you're writing it, but the minute it's published it's like dead. I mean it's not, but like this was sort of the thinking, and there's this obsession with death in this book. When you read this, even the people that you're reading about are already dead, and you're finding out the past about them, and there's just constantly people dying throughout it. There's constant references to children that are dead in it, like so many references that you don't even pick up on until you really start to look at it, and then you're like, Jesus Christ, there's so many dead kids in this book. And it's this thing of making something so uncomfortable. The subject matter is really difficult, but it kind of makes this book stay alive because it's so like, it kind of makes you squirm, and it makes it like a living thing, and it's really cool. It's just so cool. I was just so taken aback by this. I want to read everything Vladimir Nabokov's ever written, just everything. I have Pale Fire, I think it's called, so I'm definitely going to read that one. I have already read some short stories by him. I remember it was in those Penguin Modern, the little blue ones, and I remember reading one about a butterfly collector, and that was really, really cool. I really liked that one. I have such a wonder for this book. That's how I'd describe it. I think there's just a mastery with this. I don't think many books that I've read have ever achieved. The characters are so hard. They're so complex. They're so hard to nail down. And just, yeah, the whole thing, I just was absolutely in awe of it the whole time I was reading it. I thought it was amazing. I don't know what it is. There is something that I think Vladimir Nabokov was doing with this book that I think is something you don't see very often, and I think it was very beautifully done. He's a master of literature in my opinion. This book is one of my favourite classics now. I think it's in the top 5. The top 5 at the moment are The Count of Monte Cristo, Wuthering Heights, Pride and Prejudice, and We've Always Lived in the Castle. And I think this one goes into that group easily. It's just a really amazing book. So these are all the books. They're my favourites. There's 11 here. I said there was 10 at the beginning, but I forgot about Red, White and Royal Blue. So there's 11, and that might seem like an odd number and I should round it down, but I refuse to. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Comment down below if you can still remember what your favourite books of 2019 was, because you probably can't, because it's been so long since I should have filmed and uploaded this video. But anyway, I don't care. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!